What if sadness isn't something to be fixed, but something to be listened to? What if the pain you carry isn't a flaw, but a gateway to a deeper life? We're told to stay positive, to move on quickly, to smile even when it hurts. But what if that pressure to be happy all the time is the very thing making us feel empty? In today's world, fast, optimized, numbed by distraction, sadness is seen as a malfunction. But in truth, sadness may be one of the last sacred spaces where your soul still whispers to you. This video is for those who feel something deeper pulling beneath the surface, something that words can barely touch. You are not broken, you are becoming. A few months ago, a friend of mine, mid-30s, good job, decent apartment, relationship on the rocks, called me late one night. "I don't get it," he said. "Everything should be okay, but I feel like a ghost walking through my own life." He wasn't crying, he wasn't depressed in the clinical sense, but he was hollow. Like many of us in this age of dopamine and deadlines, he was drifting through the motions, silently haunted by a sadness he couldn't explain. He'd tried everything: podcasts, cold showers, journaling, even that 5 a.m. win the morning stuff. But nothing touched the emptiness. "It's like something inside me knows I'm not living the life I'm meant to live," he whispered. And that's where this begins, not with answers, but with a question. The German philosopher Martin Heidegger called this angst, a kind of existential sadness that isn't caused by any one event, but arises when we confront the terrifying freedom of our existence. To Heidegger, this sadness isn't pathological, it's revelatory. It tells us something the world won't, that you are not fully present in your own being, that you have become, as he put it, das Man, the they self, someone who lives by what others expect, not by what is true. Sadness, then, is not your enemy, it is your invitation. Think about it. Have you ever sat in your room late at night, scrolling through your phone, knowing full well that something in you is asking for silence, for meaning, but you keep scrolling anyway? That subtle ache? That quiet longing? That's not weakness. That's the part of you that still knows you're alive. Heidegger would say, you've been thrown, Geworfenheit, into the world, into a life you didn't choose. But your sadness? That's the signal. That's your being calling you back from the noise. In this video, we're going to explore why sadness is not something to be escaped, but understood. We'll look deeper into Heidegger's philosophy of being, and why existential sadness may actually be the beginning of your most authentic transformation. And more importantly, we'll explore how this sadness, when fully embraced, can help you rediscover meaning, not just as an abstract idea, but as a way of truly living. Because maybe sadness isn't the end. Maybe it's the doorway. Part 1. Heidegger explained. Sadness, being, and the crisis of the modern self. What makes Heidegger different from so many other philosophers is that he didn't start with theories. He started with being itself, not what we are, but that we are. He didn't want to know what people thought happiness was. He wanted to know what it meant to exist, to wake up in the morning and feel the weight of time, of choice, of death, and still go on living. And that's where existential sadness begins. It's not just a reaction to losing something. It's a response to being aware that your life is finite, that the world is not guaranteed to make sense, and that the choices you make matter deeply, even if no one notices. The mask of the they self, das Man. Heidegger's most famous idea is that most of us don't live authentically. We fall into what he called the they self, or das Man, a kind of anonymous identity where we live according to what they say. They say you should go to college. They say you should be married by 30. They say success means money. We obey without questioning, like ghosts floating through borrowed routines. And the more we conform, the more distant we feel from ourselves. That quiet sadness you feel while scrolling social media, the hollowness when you're surrounded by people but still feel alone, that's your soul realizing this is not your life. It's a copy. Sadness as the signal of authenticity. In our culture, sadness is often seen as a malfunction, a bug in the system, something to be fixed. But Heidegger would argue the opposite, that sadness is the natural result of becoming aware of how far we've drifted from ourselves. It is not a flaw, it is a sign of awakening. He calls this awakening uncanniness, Unheimlichkeit, the sense that we are not at home in the world. This feeling is the seed of authenticity, the beginning of returning to ourselves. Like when you're at a party and suddenly you feel a wave of detachment. Everyone is laughing, smiling, performing, and you're just there, watching, hollow. You're not broken, you're waking up. Being towards death, why time gives life meaning. One of Heidegger's most profound and misunderstood concepts is being towards death. Now, this doesn't mean living in fear or obsessing over dying. It means living with the awareness that life is finite, that one day this will all end. And rather than depressing us, this awareness can liberate us. When we truly feel the reality of death, not as an idea, but as something that will happen to us, we're shaken out of autopilot. We begin to see how precious our time is. We start asking better questions. Am I living my life or someone else's? If this day were my last, what would I regret? Why am I here? It's this confrontation with death, not to be feared but embraced, that gives weight to our choices and depth to our sadness. Eastern Echoes, Heidegger and the Tao. Though Heidegger was rooted in Western philosophy, many of his ideas strangely echo Eastern thought. Take, for example, the Taoist concept of wu-wei, non-doing or flowing with the nature of things. Heidegger believed that authentic existence is not about aggressive control, but about attunement, a state of openness to being itself. Similarly, Zen Buddhism speaks of emptiness not as nihilism, but as spaciousness, the kind of openness one needs to encounter truth directly. Sadness in this light is not a blockage. It is the beginning of receptivity. The modern crisis, why we're sad even when successful. Today's world is full of noise. We are bombarded with goals, metrics, personal branding, hustle culture. We're told to become our best selves, to always be optimizing, but deep down we know something's off. Because Heidegger reminds us that being is not a problem to solve, it's a mystery to dwell in. The modern self, conditioned by comparison and validation, becomes disconnected from being, and this disconnect feels like sadness, like confusion, like numbness. But instead of addressing the real wound, we medicate it. We scroll, we consume, we chase distractions, all to avoid the silence. But it's in that very silence, Heidegger says, that the voice of being can finally speak. So if sadness is not your enemy, but your signal, what can you actually do with it? How do we begin to live not as echoes of others, but as beings who stand grounded in our own truth? In the next part, we'll explore how authenticity can be cultivated through intentional practices, radical honesty, and a reorientation of how we relate to time, identity, and even failure. We'll break down how to stop running from your sadness and start listening to it as a teacher, a compass, and a guide toward the life you were meant to live. Part 2, Living Authentically, From Sadness to Sovereignty. If sadness is a signal, and Heidegger's philosophy teaches us that it's pointing to a disconnect from our own being, then the next question becomes inevitable. How do we live authentically? And more importantly, how do we stop running from our sadness and instead live through it, with it, as a path towards sovereignty? Let's begin by understanding one thing very clearly. Authenticity is not a lifestyle. It's not an aesthetic. It's a radical, ongoing confrontation with your own existence. And that requires courage. Step 1, from reaction to reflection, listening to sadness without rescuing yourself. Most people, when sadness appears, either try to suppress it, be positive, stay strong, or escape it through consumption, scrolling, food, alcohol, dopamine. But the true practice begins with doing neither. Instead, you pause, you listen. Not as a victim, but as an investigator of being. You allow the sadness to unfold without needing to fix it. And that is hard, it feels counterintuitive, But as Heidegger writes, the nothing itself annihilates, which means in the emptiness, something hidden begins to speak. Sometimes what's truly hurting isn't the event that triggered the sadness, but the way your life has drifted from its authentic path. You're not sad because of the breakup. You're sad because you gave up parts of yourself to maintain a false sense of belonging. You're not sad because you failed. You're sad because you pursued something your soul never asked for. Sadness is your inner rebellion. It's your being knocking from the inside, asking to be let back in. Step 2. Dismantling the false self, radical honesty. To live authentically, you must first see through the false identities you've unconsciously adopted. The job title that gives you a sense of worth. The curated personality on social media. The need to be agreeable to avoid conflict. These roles may serve us in public, but they are not who we are. And the longer we perform them, the more fragmented we become. Heidegger says we must break from das Man, the they self. This is not about becoming unique or special. It's about becoming real. And the first step is radical honesty. Ask yourself, what parts of myself have I exiled to fit in? What truths have I avoided because they would make me change? Who am I when I stop performing? This inner work is not comfortable, but it is liberating. Because the moment you begin to answer those questions, even clumsily, is the moment you begin to reclaim your being. Step 3. Slowing down to touch time, reclaiming temporality. Heidegger believed that authentic living requires a different relationship with time. In his words, we exist in a condition of thrownness, Geworfenheit. We are thrown into a world already in motion, with histories, expectations, patterns. But to live authentically, we must reclaim our temporality. We must stop rushing, not just in action, but in thought, in choice, in emotion. Sadness teaches us to slow down, to sit with what aches, to resist the demand for immediate answers. Try this. When you feel sadness, instead of asking, "How do I stop this?" ask, "What part of me is being ignored? What story am I being asked to rewrite? What values am I betraying?" These questions create space for being to emerge, for truth to surface, for meaning to arise, not as an external reward, but as an inner alignment. Step 4. From performance to presence, re-entering the world with depth. Living authentically does not mean rejecting the world, it means re-entering it with awareness, with presence. Heidegger called this dwelling, a way of being in the world that is mindful, rooted, poetic, where even simple acts, walking, cooking, sitting with a friend, become profound because they are chosen, not performed. In Eastern philosophy, this echoes the Zen concept of satori, sudden insight through complete presence. You don't have to abandon your life to live authentically. You just have to stop abandoning yourself within your life. When you walk, walk fully. When you speak, mean it. When you hurt, feel it completely. Because the deeper your presence, the deeper your peace. And sadness, it begins to shift. It doesn't vanish, but it transforms. From grief to wisdom, from ache to clarity, from weakness to invitation. Real-world example, the quiet resignation. Let me tell you about another friend, early 30s, rising quickly in his career, 6-figure income. On paper, everything looked great, but he couldn't sleep. Every morning felt like dread. He described it as a silent panic. No one knew he was suffering, not even his closest friends. Then one day, he quit. Not impulsively, but intentionally. He left his role and spent 3 months in silence, not traveling, not chasing answers, just being. He read Heidegger, practiced walking meditation, cooked simple meals, and slowly, the sadness didn't disappear. It became a guide. He discovered he didn't want to chase status. He wanted to teach, to write, to speak truthfully. That decision didn't fix his life, but it returned him to it. And that truly is the beginning of sovereignty. So far, we've explored Heidegger's message, that sadness reveals our disconnection from being, and that authenticity arises not from escaping pain, but walking through it, honestly, slowly, with presence. But what happens when the world still doesn't understand you? In part 3, we'll explore the loneliness of authenticity, why living truthfully often feels isolating at first, and how Eastern and Western philosophy converge to offer you resilience, meaning, and an inner stillness that no one can take from you. Part 3, The Loneliness of Truth, Inner Stillness in an Unseeing World. So, you've started walking the path of authenticity. You've stopped numbing your sadness. You've stopped performing a life that isn't yours. You've begun to ask the real questions. And almost immediately, you begin to feel alone. This is one of the great paradoxes of inner growth. When you finally become honest with yourself, you often become invisible to others. Why authenticity feels lonely. Martin Heidegger understood this silence well. When you break away from the they self, you detach from the social rhythm that used to carry you. The opinions of others, once so loud in your life, now seem hollow. Their approval no longer satisfies. Their conversations feel rehearsed. The crowd is untruth, Soren Kierkegaard. To live truthfully is to walk alone, at least at first. Not because you're superior, not because others are fake, but because most of society is still asleep, and waking up separates you by default. Sadness, in its truest form, is often not the sorrow of losing others. It's the sorrow of finding yourself. The echo of the world that no longer fits. There's a specific kind of sadness no one talks about. It's not heartbreak or grief. It's the ache of being awake in a world that doesn't want to be disturbed. When you begin living authentically, you may notice people avoid your depth. Conversations feel shallow. Your ambition no longer aligns with societal metrics. Even your laughter changes, slower, more grounded, less performative. This is the echo of a world you've outgrown. The career that once made you proud now feels like a cage. The social circles that once made you feel included now make you feel invisible. You're not crazy, you're evolving. Inner stillness, what the East teaches about walking alone. Here, Eastern philosophy becomes a powerful guide. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu writes, "When the Tao is lost, virtue appears. When virtue is lost, morality appears. When morality is lost, rules appear. And when rules are lost, chaos arises." This means the more disconnected we become from being, the more we cling to appearance, to morality, to external validation. But for the one who has seen beyond that, who has touched the Tao or the truth, there is no going back. Solitude then becomes not a punishment, but a sanctuary. In Zen Buddhism, the concept of zazen, sitting meditation, is not about escaping the world. It's about returning to it with eyes wide open. You sit in silence. You face the storm inside you. You observe the mind's illusions until clarity emerges like dawn from a long night. As this happens, sadness no longer overwhelms you. Instead, it deepens you. You stop needing answers. You begin living the questions. You stop chasing joy. You begin inhabiting presence. You stop striving. You begin dwelling, the Heideggerian way of being fully in the world. And ironically, that depth is what begins to draw the right people to you. When you no longer bend to fit in, you start attracting those who are also tired of the act. When your sadness is no longer shameful, others find courage in your openness. When your truth is steady, you become a lighthouse. True connection is born from inner silence. You see, when you're living inauthentically, relationships are built on roles. The fun friend, the reliable one, the achiever, the people pleaser. But when you live from your being, those roles fall apart, and so do many relationships. This is painful, but it's also necessary because it creates space for real connection. Not the kind built on mutual performance, but the kind built on presence, vulnerability, shared silence, and a commitment to truth. Only the truth of being can create a true world. Heidegger. So the loneliness of truth is not the end. It's the beginning of belonging, not to a crowd, but to a deeper reality. Not to everyone, but to the few. Modern culture versus depth. Why you must guard your stillness. Let's be honest, modern life is built to keep you numb. Apps, ads, algorithms, they profit from your instability. If you are sad, they sell you products. If you are restless, they give you distractions. If you are lonely, they sell you images of other people's curated joy. This is why your stillness is revolutionary. When you live with presence, you are no longer manipulable. When you are anchored in your truth, sadness no longer makes you panic. When you are comfortable in solitude, you become sovereign. That is dangerous to a world that wants you dependent. So guard your inner silence, nurture your sadness. Stay awake, because in this world, your authenticity is your rebellion. So, what now? You've walked through the sadness. You've faced the loneliness. You've tasted authenticity. You've learned to dwell in stillness. In the final part of this video, we'll leave you with a quiet call to action. One that honors your pain, your becoming, and your path toward wholeness. Because sadness, when listened to, does not break you. It shapes you. It invites you home. Part 4, the final reflection, a quiet call to action. So, if sadness visits you tonight, don't run from it. Sit with it, breathe with it, ask it what it's trying to show you. Because you are not broken. You are simply remembering yourself. The world will tell you to cheer up, to move on, to be productive. But what if your sadness is not a flaw, but a signal, a compass pulling you back toward a life that's more real, more whole, more yours? As Heidegger taught us, existence is not a problem to solve, but a mystery to live. And sadness is part of that mystery. It is not your enemy. It is the doorway to authenticity. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Mary Oliver. If this video spoke to something deep inside you, I invite you to stay. This is a space for those who are ready to live honestly, slowly, fully. Subscribe, share, reflect below. Not to go viral, but to go inward. Because when we honor our sadness, we don't just feel more, we become more.